Hey guys, Scripture here with another video. Darth Vader's legacy exposes a fatal flaw that's dividing Star Wars. Now, this actually implies some stuff that goes way beyond Vader. It's just another illustration of them kind of either overlooking or downright purposefully making Yoda and Luke idiots. It's one or the other. Either they just don't even know what they're doing, or they're purposefully making them seem stupid. And there's a lot of things about this. Okay, so Star Wars has confirmed that a driving force of Kylo Ren's downfall was his ignorance of galactic history. Marvel's Legacy of Vader series has been tracing the pivotal time between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. Basically, they're trying to fill in this guy's story and why he wanted to be like Vader. And they're doing it with this comic book. And I think they also did it between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker because the two directors were having a pissing contest. And all of a sudden, Kylo went from questioning his allegiance to the dark side and Vader to then literally 2 minutes into The Rise of Skywalker, he's right back where he was at the beginning of The Force Awakens. It's just... Anyways, as Kylo has confronted his actions of his predecessor, the story has repeatedly made clear how little he knows. Legacy of Vader #7 by the creative team of Charles Soule and Luke Ross contains it contains the latest moment in which Kylo Ren's fault knowledge of history is emphasized. Okay, there's implications to that. However, this is far from just a personal failing on Ren's part. Rather, it epitomizes the flimsy grasp on history that the Star Wars galaxy has always seemingly had. Okay, this brings me to Yoda. Jedi Archives. What do you mean, flimsy history? That's what Disney's presenting. The Jedi had all the history. Everything. In fact, when there was a planet missing, it shocked everybody. Right? In Attack of the Clones. It was a surprise to the Jedi that would be the case. Because they've got everything on lockdown. So it hasn't always had a flimsy grasp on history. That's not true at all. This is just bad writing, so you have to say it had a flimsy grasp on history. Okay, so Vader Legacy #7. Charles Soule and Luke Ross. Yeah, there's this another Jedi that survived Order 66, except for this time, she's old and Kylo's gonna deal with her, I guess. Because we're doing the same stuff. It's another one. Just another one survived Order 66, you guys. Oh, no. How many? It's just getting so stupid. Which also makes Yoda sound like an idiot.
Luke, when gone am I? The last of the Jedi will you be?
In the prequels, Yoda could feel the Jedi dying. He felt it in the Force. He knew what was happening. So the idea that he's just this idiot who doesn't know that there's like so many Jedi alive after Order 66. And I don't care if you like that in the EU, good for you. But it does make Yoda sound like an idiot, saying that Luke was the last Jedi. And it's called A New Hope. Return of the Jedi. It all was centered around Luke, but now we're just going to sort of spread around and take away from Luke too. Anyways, this is just another one, and she's like super keen on like the Jedi mind trick. Like she learned the Jedi mind trick better than Obi-Wan and better than anybody else, to the point where she could stop a Sith from killing her using a mind trick and all this stuff. Of course, because we want a rando character in a comic book to be more compelling and more powerful than dudes in the movies. It's just... And then on the flip side... in Andor, you have a totally random woman who can force heal. It just diminishes anyways, sorry, I'm ranting, I'm getting mad. Hardcore Star Wars fans are notorious for being obsessive chroniclers. They are deeply invested in having a full coherent picture of the franchise's in-universe history. Since the earliest days of Star Wars, though, it has been evident that the inhabitants of a galaxy far, far away don't share this fastidious love of historical accuracy. Well, yeah, that's because the writing's been poor. In A New Hope, it is implied that Luke Skywalker had been raised with a garbled version of the Empire's founding story, while the true nature of the Jedi had already faded from common memory just a few decades after its downfall. 30 years beyond that, Kylo Ren is depicted struggling to understand the past because the facts aren't readily available. Okay, so we've got some problems here. Okay, so this is explainable. A few decades after their downfall, that's explainable. But when Obi-Wan's talking to Luke, it's not like Luke is like shocked about Jedi. He knew that there were Jedi. He knew that there was the Clone Wars. You fought with my father in the Clone Wars? It's not like they didn't know anything. But it had been a few decades, and in a situation where all the Jedi have died, it would make sense. But if you've got 100 of them running around, things are going to get out. Right? It's just the way it is. So, yeah. 30 years beyond that, Kylo Ren is depicted struggling. Okay. This is another problem, though. Like, Kylo or Ben or whatever, he was with Luke till he was, like, in his 20s. He was, like, 23, 24 years old before the stupid scene where Luke pulls, ignites his lightsaber, okay? That's old enough to know some stuff. Luke had the Jedi texts. Like, what is going on? So he just didn't know anything. Now, I'm actually checking this. Because I don't know. This is it. Okay, so. Jedi texts, blah, 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 blah. Lost Jedi wisdom and abilities. Tenets and history of the Jedi. Guys. And give specific guidance to those studying the path of the Jedi. This is Disney's canon, okay? So why would Kylo Ren know nothing if it has the tenets and history of the Jedi? Future students were encouraged to add to the books over millennia. Over millennia. Until it was discovered by Luke Skywalker. Okay, so here's the first one he finds. So he's finding Jedi text based on the cover when he's pretty young. So he finds a holocron with Yoda. This is their canon. With a message from Yoda. I don't know if Charles Soule, because Charles Soule's involved with this comic with Kylo Ren in it too. What the heck happened to Charles Soule? 3 ABY. Bro, so Luke was basically finding Jedi texts from, like, right after Return of the Jedi. Luke Skywalker collected them, beginning by locating a sacred text within the living sea on the planet Gazian during his days as a Jedi learner. During the Galactic Civil War. So how would he not have explained anything to Kylo? I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But the bottom line is he was looking for these things from right off the bat. Right after Jedi. Okay, so he was looking for them the whole time. Because he was only on Octu for 5 years. So he had them when he was training Ben. For sure. Because Ben would have been 23. He was finding them, like, before Ben was even born. Right? Because, TFA's 30 years later. So this doesn't make sense. And this is where they're making Yoda look dumb. They're making Luke look incompetent and stupid, even in his training. There's no reason that Kylo Ren wouldn't have a pretty clear understanding of the Jedi history, which we just saw. It's in their own canon. Like, there's history in these books. Jedi history doesn't make sense. Kylo face-to-face with a Jedi who survived Order 66. Of course. That's all the ideas they have. She questions whether he even knows what it was. Earlier issues have shown that the Supreme Leader of the First Order lacks valuable knowledge of historical figures like Palpatine, even his own grandfather, Darth Vader. Which doesn't make sense. So Luke in The Last Jedi explains the whole history of the Jedi and what happened with Palpatine and what happened with Vader to Rey.
At the height of their powers, they allowed Darth Sidious to rise, create the Empire, and wipe them out.
Some rando who shows up on an island when he supposedly doesn't care about the Jedi anymore, doesn't want to have anything to do with them, even though he's saving these books and blah, 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 and telling Rey. And he didn't bother to tell his nephew, who was with him till he was 5 years older than Rey is in The Force Awakens. 4 or 5 years old. She's like 18 or 17. He didn't bother to tell his own nephew this stuff. That's insane. Oh, they're calling Kylo the Supreme Leader. That's what kind of confused me. Okay. Earlier research have shown that the Supreme Leader of the First Order lacks valuable knowledge. That doesn't make sense. That just makes Luke Skywalker a complete idiot. He's even worse. They just keep pooping on him. This is so stupid. But this is the only way they can explain why Kylo becomes the way he does in Rise of Skywalker, because they don't have any other creative way of doing it, because it was such a mess. So the only answer they have is to make Luke Skywalker even dumber and stupider and make even less sense. Awesome. Let me please buy these comics. Oh my gosh. And then this is where this guy is wrong. What this amounts to is the suggestion that history is poorly recorded in the Star Wars universe. It's the opposite. And Luke knew about the Clone Wars, right? When he says he fought in the Clone Wars, he would have known that the Jedi, about Order 66. He would have known about all this stuff. The Clone Wars end for a reason. Like, the idea that he would know, the idea that Obi-Wan wouldn't tell him. Obi-Wan didn't withhold information other than the fact that his dad was Darth Vader, which is kind of sensible. I think, at the time. He wasn't ready for that knowledge. And the facts are easily manipulated with disinformation and false narratives, easy to spread across the vast interstellar distances that make up civilization. The result is a franchise that embodies the classic saying, those who don't learn history are doomed to... No, that's just an excuse for the crappy sequels and the crappy writing. Ben had access to the information. Jedi history, all types of stuff from Luke. And Luke just never showed him. Luke just was a loser. I don't like force healing, okay? But Luke just never showed him that? And then when Rey heals him, he's like, what? What were you doing, Luke? What were you doing when you were training him till he was a grown man? It doesn't even make any sense. Oh, it sucks so bad. Kylo Ren's historical reckoning and legacy of Vader speaks to the effectiveness with which Palpatine's empire was able to rewrite history after the Clone Wars. Of course, much of this focused on the Jedi, who were simultaneously branded as traitors and also written out of existence as much as possible, to the point where they became semi-legendary within a single generation. Okay, but that doesn't explain Ben not knowing anything. And even in Jedi Survivor, they had collected a lot of the archives. And there they are, Jedi that survived Order 66 in Jedi Survivor, and they're collecting Jedi knowledge. It doesn't make sense that Ben wouldn't know. I could understand if you're saying that, like, some other Darksider that grew up being trained by Palpatine or something. You know what I'm saying? That would make sense. I could see him withholding that. But he was with Luke till he was 24 years old. This is retarded. The scope of this, when applied to the whole galaxy, is hard for many Star Wars fans to comprehend, but in fact, that likely aided the Empire's efforts. Consider the fact that in many parts of the galaxy, Jedi would have already been looked at as distant, almost mythical figures rather than flesh and blood beings. Yes, but there was, a rebellion, and part of the rebellion was Order 66. There were lots of people that knew that happened. Bail Organa witnessed it firsthand. Mon Mothma knew what happened. They all knew. They knew there were no more Jedi. These people were surrounded by Jedi for a certain period of time, and then there was none. And again, Bail witnessed it, and he was part of the rebellion. So all the rebellion people would have known. This is just excuses for crappy garbage writing. Jedi stories are so often Jedi-centric, it can be hard to remember that even at their height, the Order's numbers were minuscule in comparison to the total population of the galaxy. It doesn't matter. There were other people. It doesn't matter. The Jedi kept their own history. Once the Imperials destroyed or at least suppressed that, it was likely surprisingly easy to manipulate galactic perception of the Order. Yes! For some people, but not everybody, and definitely not Ben. Though it is less extensively covered in the Star Wars lore, it is clear that this process of historical... So basically they're saying that that the reason Ben is struggling with good and evil is in part because he doesn't know anything. He's a misinformed boob who knows nothing and is therefore easily manipulated by Snoke and blah, 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 blah. Which makes no sense. Well, it does make sense, but only if Luke is a complete loser bum. Not just in The Last Jedi, but all the way leading up to that, with how he trained him and how he treated him. He basically treated his nephew like a piece of crap and treated some rando after he quit the Jedi better than him. That's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. It raises fascinating questions about history in the Star Wars galaxy. The short answer is that it seems the scale of galactic civilization makes it difficult for historians to propagate. Shut up! This isn't about that. This is about Ben. The consequences of this are a driving factor in the legacy of Vader. Brutal. Ren represents an entire generation of galactic citizens who don't fully grasp the tyranny that preceded generation fought so hard to overthrow or have proper context for just how nefarious the Empire truly was. See, and this is where people are... This is so ridiculous. In My Sequels Reimagined, Ben is taken as a child. He's like 5, 6 years old. He's just beginning his journey. And he's abducted. And the reason Luke's upset at himself is because he couldn't save him when he got abducted. And he didn't know how it could have happened without him feeling it in the Force. And he was very upset about that. So he sends the other kids from his order home. Because he's like, dude, like, if I can't keep these kids safe, get out of here because something bad's going to happen. That's another reason why he never got involved with Rey, who in My Sequels Reimagined is Ben's sister. Because he's like, whoa, like, I'm not taking a gamble with another one of my family members with what's gone on. So, this is so stupid. Plus, if Kylo Ren represents an entire generation of galactic citizens who didn't understand the tyranny of the previous generation, why was he so obsessed with Darth Vader and being a bad guy like Darth Vader? This is the most senseless, dumb thing I've ever heard. They're making everything worse. They're making the sequels even worse, which is incredible to say. They're making Luke worse. Yoda's an idiot. Well, that's already been established. I can't believe this, how bad this is. And no, this whole article is excuses. No, this is bad writing. Of course, it wouldn't be right to neglect the urgent way in which this reflects real life. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, whatever. This is something that the franchise should lean into. Star Wars has the opportunity to be arguably more relevant than ever by exploring the fractured understanding of history in the sequel era. No, it makes it worse! As for Kylo, it is illuminated that his Star Wars character arc is even more tragic because he didn't realize... No, it is tragic because his uncle was a complete loser. Even worse than before. Oh my gosh, you guys. Let me know in the comment section what you think. This is brutal. They just keep tripling, quadrupling down on destroying Luke Skywalker. What are they doing, these idiots? Anyways, let me know in the comment section what you think. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. It always helps the channel. Feel free to check out everything else on my channel. Have yourselves a really good day.